Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and we are finally reacting to week number 2 of the NFL preseason and giving our second edition of Stock Up and Stock Down of the, 2024 NFL preseason. Hopefully you watched yesterday's game between the San Francisco 49ers and the New Orleans Saints. Niners won 16-10. It was ultimately a rather positive day for the red and gold. A lot more positives than negatives, that is for sure. Again, it was a better performance than it was against the Titans in week 1. A lot more downs in week 1. This week, a lot more ups, I will say. And to begin the show, let's share our honorable mentions. Jair Brown, safety, didn't play too much against the Saints, but ultimately annihilated Taysom Hill in the backfield for a massive tackle for loss early in the first quarter. Starters don't play much, but you have to give credit where it's due, and Jair Brown looks like he's taken that next step and is the first honorable mention of our stock up and stock downs. Alex Barrett is the next honorable mention. I think Alex Barrett is in an interesting position to actually make the Niners roster simply because they need edge rushing depth. Now, I would not be shocked if they go and trade for a player or sign an edge rusher of higher quality. But Alex Barrett against the Saints yesterday almost had a sack, with that almost sack turned into a strip forced fumble and also got the recovery. So again, want to give credit where it's due to a player who's been here for a long time. Alex Barrett, a strip, forced fumble, and a recovery on Spencer Rattler. Moving along here, Darrell Luter Jr. There are some people that don't believe Darrell Luter Jr. is going to make the Niners roster. I would push back on that. I think Darrell Luter Jr. is almost a lock to make the Niners roster. I think he is, while not had the most amazing preseason so far, he has been strong, been good through training camp, been solid enough through the preseason in 2 weeks that have been played so far. But against the Saints, had his best outing of his young career. Now, again, it is preseason, but that's why we're here. He was the most targeted player in coverage yesterday for San Francisco's defense. And despite being targeted the most on 6 targets, he had 6 total targets, only gave up 2 catches for 18 yards, almost had an interception, bowling right through his hands. So a nice day for a young cornerback trying to make the roster. Then there's Tatum Bethune, 7th-round pick this past year. I think he has not been a surprise. I expected him to push for that 3rd linebacker job, but he has 18 tackles through 2 games so far, had 10 yesterday. He leads the team in tackles so far in training camp, and I think when you look at tackles as a primary stat, things get tricky because one way is you are a tackle merchant. You're Blake Martinez, right, for the Packers and the Giants a handful of years ago, where you're not playing fast, you're not hitting your angles in your spots where you should, and ultimately you are essentially playing too conservative. You're not making plays. You're letting the game come to you rather than attacking the ball. That's not been Tatum Bethune. Yes, he's young. He's made some mistakes, but he has 18 tackles for a reason. He continues to find himself in the area where the ball is. And he's looked good. He's not missing many tackles. He's looked okay in pass coverage. But you can definitely tell that he has a knack for being around the ball. 18 tackles. He isn't a tackle merchant. He isn't stealing tackles. He's out there. He's out there simply just, again, putting his nose in the dirt and getting his face in where the ball is. And our last honorable mention is more of a mixed in my eyes, but I want to give him a credit for a couple nice plays on the day. Samuel Womack, not great as a cornerback, not the best cornerback out there on a 4th and 5. I think with Derek Carr still playing quarterback, Gross-Matos gets pressure. Womack gets beat to the outside towards the right sideline, gives up the first down. Not what you want to see. He's a player who I don't think makes the roster, but on special teams, that's his bread and butter. I thought yesterday he was really good in special teams. In the second half, he had a really good open field tackle. I think he kind of nosedived early in the game. Definitely kind of picked himself somewhat back up in the second half. So again, more of a mixed, but ultimately an honorable mention, if you will. I want to shout out Papa J saying, "What's up, Sterling? What's up, Papa J?" And Invade 49er says, the Saints might release Foskey. He could be a fit. Also, Raiders might trade Tyree Wilson. Yeah, that's certainly an option in regards to depth on the edge rushing position. I'm not too sure San Francisco wants Wilson from the Raiders. I don't think Wilson will be traded, but definitely a whiff so far by that regime, or the new regime didn't draft him, so he could be out of town. But they'll probably have a high asking price for him. Moving along, though, to our first stock up of week 2 of the NFL preseason against the Saints, that is Joshua Dobbs. Now, Joshua Dobbs came into this game, I think, not having quarterback 2 locked up, but definitely having the edge in that room simply because of the moves he can make with his legs. And against the Saints, did that again. Against the Saints, Joshua Dobbs was 12 for 21, 133 passing yards, 25 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. There was some bad, despite a lot of good. There was a 3rd and goal where Dobbs evades and kind of leaves a clean pocket, spins to his blind side, his left, almost right into the edge rusher because Jalen Moore got too deep. The edge rusher, Moore didn't get deep enough. The edge rusher is super far outside, and Dobbs is right in front of his face, and he's like, oh, crap, what do I do? Eventually threw an incompletion, but that's kind of the only negative thing Joshua Dobbs did all day. And while there really isn't a quarterback controversy, there certainly is a quarterback competition for the QB2 job. Invader Niner here says he wouldn't be shocked if Brandon Allen is quarterback 2. I can see Shanahan being reluctant to pick a player that will be playing hero ball at times or more willing to play out of the scheme, if you will. Then Joshua Dobbs will definitely do that. I think that Joshua Dobbs, what he showed yesterday, I think was the strongest performance, whether it was Purdy or Brandon Allen or Tanner Mordecai. I thought that Dobbs was really, really good. There was a 3rd and 10 where there's nobody open, and what does he do? He does what Brandon Allen simply can't do. Scrambles for 13 yards, gets the first down. There was a play later in the game where Joshua Dobbs kind of pulls a Marion Barber, and he runs to his left and runs to his right and evades 2 defenders, and then he kind of jumps forward for a first down. And it's like, okay, like if the offensive line is an issue, like some think it might be, or Colton McKivitz has a bad day, Trent Williams isn't healthy for a week or 2 or isn't re-signed by week 1 against the Jets, Joshua Dobbs could give you something else that Brandon Allen simply can't. But it wasn't just with his legs. His arm was also on display. There was a 38-yard deep shot towards the right side line, perfectly placed to Jacob Cowan. And we're talking, looped in over there, bang, right into his hands. It was a great throw by Joshua Dobbs. And even earlier in the game, I think, he had a 20-yard wheel route to Matt Breida towards the right seam. That's things that Joshua Dobbs can give you. And to be fair to him, I was not sure he could throw the ball that well. Now, was it against all of the Saints starters? No, but the Saints should be a better defense. Some are saying top 10. I won't go that far. I will say the Saints always have a tough defense, a stout defense. They don't have the talent that they've had in previous years. Yeah, Chase Young's there and Cam Jordan's there and Marshall Lattimore is still there, but ultimately it's the Saints. They're kind of in this weird, like, we're going for it, but we're not good enough to actually go for it kind of place as a franchise. But on defense, I think Joshua Dobbs torched them for what it's worth. He had the only touchdown drive of the game for San Francisco that came on a read option keeper towards the goal line with 1 second left before halftime. And even then he fought through a defensive back to get in the end zone. And I think, yes, many people can say that, again, like Invader Niner said, that Brandon Allen will be the team's quarterback too. I can see that. Yes, I can see Shanahan being hesitant to play Joshua Dobbs or giving him the job as quarterback too, because the improvisation is there. They're playing hero ball. That stuff doesn't always make Shanahan happy. He definitely wants his quarterbacks, especially his backups, to play in the system. And when they don't, I could see him being a little hesitant to go ahead and give Dobbs a green light and say, here you go. But Laurie Matthews says here, all three quarterbacks had a good game. Well, four played. One wasn't that great, and that was Brock Purdy. But yes, Mordecai, Allen, and Joshua Dobbs, I think, played pretty well. I didn't want to give Brandon Allen and Tanner Mordecai stock ups because I don't think Brandon Allen is really in a place where his stock could actually go up. I think he walked into this game as quarterback number 2. I don't think his stock dropped. I just think that Joshua Dobbs' stock rose higher than Brandon Allen's. Brandon Allen has been a victim of his receivers. Like really, really poorly, Ronnie Bell, Trent Taylor, Danny Gray, Tay Martin, just really struggling to catch the football. But Brandon Allen knows the coaching staff. He's been there for a year. He knows Brock Purdy. I think I said this a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that if it was in the middle of a game and Brock Purdy goes down, I would feel comfortable, and I think Shanahan would too, playing Brandon Allen. But if you had weeks to prepare or a week to prepare, I think he would then play Joshua Dobbs simply because Dobbs can give you more. He can evade pressure, has a better arm. And again, he's a much bigger quarterback where I think Brandon Allen would fit the system. He'd give it to Deebo and Aiyuk and Kittle and those guys, let them cook. I think Dobbs is more comfortable cooking himself, which, again, could be a good thing. And for Shanahan, could also be a bad thing. Moving on to our next stock down of the day. Sticking with the quarterback position, can I just ask, what was up with Brock Purdy's play? And it's not Purdy himself. It's how much he played and who he played with. I'm not someone that believes Brock Purdy shouldn't have played. Starters at a certain point should play in the preseason, whether it was Jimmy G, Trey Lance. I don't care if you're Mahomes, Josh Allen. Ultimately, I think starters should play at least one game. And week 2 makes a lot of sense, knowing that week 3 game is a Friday, usually, at least for San Francisco, it's a Friday. And it's a shorter week to prep for that game. I just didn't like the franchise quarterback being out there for 3 drives. I know Kyle said that he wanted to have Purdy play one long extended drive, which didn't happen because multiple 3-and-outs, which, okay, it happens once, fine, go back out there, do the work you're supposed to do. Happens again, get out of the game. I don't want to risk anything, but when you look at who didn't play alongside Brock Purdy, no Chris McCaffrey, no Kyle Juszczyk, no Deebo, no Aiyuk, no Kittle, no Trent Williams, no Aaron Banks, you don't have 2 starting offensive linemen, and it's not just you don't have 2, starting offensive linemen, you don't have 2 starting offensive linemen blocking your backside. That's the confusing part, and to allow Brock Purdy, who is supposed to be your franchise quarterback, who you apparently want to give this massive $325 million contract to and hope he's your guy the next 5+ seasons, it's kind of reckless to let Jalen Moore and Nick Zakelj block for Brock Purdy where he gets nailed a handful of times and you still put him back out there. Again, 1 drive, okay, whatever. 2 drives, okay, you're done. You're struggling. No one's getting open. No one's blocking for you. Pull the plug on this thing. At some point, you got to make sure the boy's healthy when the season starts against the Jets in 3 weeks' time. But Kyle didn't do that. And I think you can look at the other side of the field. The Saints, when they rolled out Derek Carr, who think what you want of Derek Carr, he's their starting quarterback. He is their number 1 guy. He played alongside the entire starting offensive line, minus Tilly's Fuaga, then Taysom Hill, then Chris Olave. He had all the starters with him playing together. Why was Brock Purdy out there with Jacob Cowing and Ronnie Bell and Trent Taylor and Nick Zakelj? And yeah, sure, Jake Brendel's there, fine. Sure, Colton McKivitz is there, Dominic Pooney's there. I don't even think the offensive line on the right-hand side was that big of an issue. It's the left-hand side. Why would you want to risk your quarterback getting blindsided when, flashback 2 years ago, all it takes is 1 throw, 1 snap, 1 hit, and that UCL is gone? but that's a meaningful game in the playoffs. It happens. Okay, that sucks. This is a preseason game. He has no business being out there for that long. Like, it's not the same thing to play Derek Carr or Joshua Dobbs, who, again, Dobbs is a backup, Carr is their starter, but he isn't the franchise quarterback of a Super Bowl team, a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, that is only playing 3 starters. Like, if you're going to trot out Brock Purdy, then put the rest of the guys out there that are healthy. I get no Aiyuk because of the contract, Trent because of the contract, McCaffrey because of injury. Why didn't Deebo play? Why didn't Kittle play? Well, I'm sure Aaron Banks is hurt fine. And if you don't want to play Deebo and you don't want to play Kittle, I'm sorry. Your season rides on Brock Purdy being healthy much more than George Kittle and Deebo Samuel being healthy. They've missed time over the last 3 seasons, and you've been in the playoffs every single year. You can't afford to watch Joshua Dobbs play a full season of football. If this is the last dance, there was no urgency of Kyle Shanahan to keep his quarterback standing upright. That's confusing. If you want to play him, fine. I'm good with that. Then play everybody else that can actually suit up. Don't pick and choose and watch your quarterback get hit 3 or 4 times, then say, okay, we're done. Just pull him out. After 1 hit, after 2 hits, take him out. Like, we're good. Yeah, we didn't get what you wanted. There was no joint practices. I get Kyle values those more, but I value the health of my starting quarterback over preseason reps. You know who Brock Purdy is. He doesn't have to prove anything to you. I'd rather Kenny Mordecai get 10 more reps, 3 more drives than Brock Purdy risk getting injured. I don't love that from Kyle Shanahan. It's just confusing. It's not a negative. It's just like, what are we doing? Like, it doesn't make sense. And yes, in mid-Runner, I get this. I don't mind Brock getting hit. You have to get hit. You want to play in the NFL, you got to get hit and get back up. I'm cool with that. Totally fine with that. I have no problem watching Brock Purdy get hit once on he threw it and kind of gets smacked. What I don't want is him running in circles like he was, trying to find a play to make, throwing the ball at an awkward angle, getting smacked in the side of the shoulder, then going down. Like, that's what we can't have here. That's where it's like, what the heck are we doing, Kyle? That's okay, re-examine what you're doing here. Like, someone's got to get in your ear and say, Kyle, let's think straight. Get the boy out of the game. Moving on to our next stock up from week 2 against the Saints. Surprisingly, it's a receiver. Jacob Cowing. Jacob Cowing was amazing yesterday. He was phenomenal. In his NFL, if you will, debut, the first time fans have actually seen a rookie receiver in this 2024 draft class, Cowing looked phenomenal. He looked like he belonged. He was fast. He was physical. He was doing the end arounds. He was taking 38-yard deep balls down the field. He almost had a touchdown in this game. And I think what we saw on display was exactly what he did at Arizona. It's a guy that can be a gadget player, sure, but he can also extend the field. He can open up things for you. And I just started to envision him playing with Deebo and Aiyuk and Pearsall and Jennings and Kittle. Like, this kid can do some things. And we already knew that from the scouting report. But Jacob Cowing, I think his role is probably going to be as a return man. But I would not be shocked if Jacob Cowing, by the way he separates, how he plays physical, he touched the ball 5 times, had 70 yards, had a 19-yard end around, had a 38-yard deep ball. Like, he's versatile. He's really quick, and it's weird. And we'll kind of talk about the other receivers in a second. But, when you watch players like Dante Pettis, who I know played great against for the Bears this week, but Dante Pettis and Danny Gray, their speed never translated to the NFL. Jacob Cowing's speed translates to the NFL, the gadget plays he can do in the Shanahan offense. Obviously, you can project what he could be, but from what he's shown in just one game, mind you, the sky is the limit for a player like Cowing in Shanahan's offense. Yes, he'll be the Ray McLeod replacement, probably the backup Deebo Samuel, if you will, this season because he can do things like that. But I think, we all talk about the Miami Dolphins' speed, and rightfully so. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, a couple of years ago was Trent Sherfield, Devon Achane, Mostert. Cowling does have a little bit of that Miami Dolphins offense vibe, which obviously is rooted in Kyle Shanahan's offense, but he brings something else to the offense that San Francisco doesn't have, but have been looking for a long time. Dante Pettis, Danny Gray, even in previous years, Ronnie Bell. Cowling really can be a deep threat, but also a gadget player. And despite being 5'9", wants to get physical. Did have one play you were like, okay, let's stop being Ted Ginn for a second. He caught a screen pass, makes two guys miss, runs all the way to the right, and then gets crushed. It's like, okay, learn to call it a day. But overall, I think a really, really strong day for Jacob Cowling, and already was going to make the roster, but definitely, put his stamp on that 5th or 6th depth chart spot in the receiver room. To our next stock down, kind of already talked about him. That is Jalen Moore. If there is any actual winners and losers from a game like this, well, yes, it was 16-10, Niners won. I think Trent Williams has every right to ask for about $5 more million after watching, Brandon Parker and Chris Hubbard and Jalen Moore especially get an opportunity and just be terrible the majority of the game. I get Jalen Moore was sick last week, didn't play. This was his first, real game against a starting opposing defense, and it was terrible. He had 30 pass blocking snaps, allowed 3 pressures. There was a play, and I kid you not, that Jalen Moore looked like a Madden 25 left tackle. And what I mean by that is, if you've played Madden for the last 10 years, you know this. You snap the ball, the game glitches, the animations suck in that game so much, your left tackle just stands there and lets the edge rusher go right by him. And you snap the ball, you hike, you have a guy open 30 yards downfield, you're swinging up, about to throw it up, and then bang, you get smacked. And you're like, what happened? You go watch the replay, the ball gets snapped, and your offensive lineman's like, and he just freezes. And you're like, well, what was that? Who programmed it that way? I left this game saying, like, who programmed Jalen Moore as a Madden 25 left tackle? He let an edge rusher go right by him. There was a play in this one where, and I kid you not, Joshua Dobbs snaps the ball. Jalen Moore, slow footwork, moves like 3 steps to his left, and the edge rusher just continues to run in the circle around him. And Moore is like, I don't know what to do. And Dobbs is like, oh my God, I'm about to get sacked. And it's like, what are we doing? Then on 3rd and 12 with Brock Purdy in the game, I don't know what him and Nick Zakelj were doing, but they let Brian Brzee get by them. 2 offensive linemen, mind you. And Zakelj tried to pick up the stunt. Jalen Moore said, I don't know how to play football, and just stopped trying. And if that's going to be your backup left tackle, if that's going to be potentially who's out there with the ones, if you can't figure out Trent Williams' contract situation, I mean, call it a day. You're not going to win games with that. Yes, you're going to have the rest of the offense out there. I understand. But if this Trent Williams thing lingers, which it already has for too long now, we are in the witching hour of get this thing done. You're going into the last week of the preseason. You have, 4 days until week 3 of the preseason, and Trent doesn't need that, but you want him in the building. You cannot have Jalen Moore out there. Like, it's to a point where it's like he'll make the team because he knows the system and they like him, but it's like you can't trust him. And this is funny because it calls back to the draft process of why didn't they pick a tackle? And Shanahan and Lynch, their retort was, we really like Jalen Moore. And it's like, you like that? Explain to me how in the world you think that's acceptable to play. Like, yes, the Saints don't have star edge rushers, fine. The Jets do. The Jets have so many edge rushers, they had to trade some away in the offseason. In fact, they have so many edge rushers, they may not even sign their best one, Hassan Reddick, because they can kind of survive without him. I just don't love that. Like, you can't do that. You cannot allow Jalen Moore to be your starting left tackle week 1 because it was terrible. Terrible. The next 2 stock-ups we have, though, are on offensive line. I've already seen many of you in here talking about Dominic Pooney, talking about he always looking for work, taking on Brian Brzee on a spin move. I agree with you all. Dominic Pooney has been the ultimate stock-up. If there's one player you left training camp or the preseason thus far saying that guy's going to be a star, that guy's going to be a starter week 1, it's Dominic Pooney. He has been phenomenal. He's allowed in 30 pass blocking snaps against the Saints, 1 pressure. Against the Titans and Saints, 44 pass blocking snaps, 1 pressure allowed, no quarterback hits, and no sacks. There was a play on Twitter that I think it was Guy Haberman put out saying, watch Dominic Pooney. And there was a few more, but that play in particular where it is 3rd down in the red zone. Niners are trying to score a touchdown before halftime. And Pooney, the ball snapped. Pooney kind of pushes off and passes the edge rusher to McKivitz, right? The light push. McKivitz kind of has him. McKivitz kind of seems like he wasn't ready for it for some reason, not understanding that at all. But then Pooney, having the wherewithal, knowing I'm not blocking anybody, spins the opposite way. So his back is facing the edge rusher. Spins around and helps McKivitz. Now, I don't think Josh Dobbs actually gets hit on that play. But to have the wherewithal, the intellect, the high intelligence, the high IQ to go, hey, where can I help out? I'm not doing anything currently. He assessed the situation. There wasn't a delayed blitz. He simply just passed off, checked, am I good, am I good? He said, look, I have to have the peripheral to help out my right tackle. I can only think about, had we had that in the Super Bowl, we probably have won 2 so far. If it wasn't for Mike Person and Spencer Burford, and it was Dominic Pooney instead, maybe San Francisco is hoisting 2 Lombardi trophies. Maybe San Francisco can actually avoid getting crushed by Chris Jones. Now, it's the preseason. Let's not go too far ahead of ourselves, but Dominic Pooney is this team's starting right guard. There was a play in this game where Brian Brzee, who a first-round pick, maybe an early second-round pick a handful of years ago, man, he's a really good player for the Saints. Supposed to be a big-time player for them this year as well. Dominic Pooney is like putting him in a spin cycle. Brzee's trying to get out of there, and Pooney basically has him in this revolving door. When you go to New York and you have the big businesses and it's just a big revolving door and you're running around because you're a child, like, yeah, this is so fun, and you get sick and throw up. Dominic Pooney had Brian Brzee in that, like, all game. He was phenomenal against the Saints and has been really good the past 2 preseason games, and took that right guard position from Burford and Feliciano due to injury, and I don't think he's giving it up anytime soon, which, again, I already see many of you in the comments talking about Derek Kingston. Yes, Derek Kingston also gets a stock up. I'll be the first to tell you that I didn't love the Kingston pick. I thought there were more moves they should have made, and the time will maybe justify that. I think having a backup tight end would have certainly helped. I think there was bodies at that point in the draft in the 6th round that could have helped you over a Cam Latu, over a Eric Saubert, over a Mason Pline, or a Jake Tungis. But Jarrett Kingston, to my surprise, and good for him, he's looked really strong as well, to a point where it's like, okay, like maybe in 1 year's time, you can say goodbye to John Feliciano. You can afford to, let Spencer Burford walk or trade him when he's healthy. And because Jarrett Kingston has been really good as well, playing right guard and right tackle, also playing left guard at times during training camp and preseason. But Kingston, kind of like Pooney, in 40 pass blocking snaps against the Saints, only 1 pressure allowed. In the last 2 weeks, 60 pass blocking snaps, only 1 pressure allowed. I mean, man, like, I don't, like, I know San Francisco has a type with their offensive linemen. They like those quick shuttle times. I'm pretty sure that Dominic Puni has a 4.47 shuttle time. They love the 3-cone drills and stuff. They want offensive linemen that can move. Kingston and Puni can move, yes, but they've been really good as pass blockers. And, Dominic Puni and Kingston, yes, need work in the run game, but it's not like Puni wasn't run behind for about 4 yards a carry in Kansas. If anybody's leaving the preseason not being impressed with Dominic Puni or Jarrett Kingston, I get Pearsall hasn't played and the defensive rookies have kind of gotten more of the spotlight. Malik Mustafa, D. Winters, Bethune. I mean, if we were to show or treat offensive linemen, rookies, specifically like, young quarterbacks, if you're to put highlights out there on NFL's Twitter or X and other stuff like that, Dominic Puni so far would be the Caleb Williams of rookie offensive linemen. It's really, really impressive what they've done. And Kingston and Puni both deserve massive thumbs up and praise for what they've done so far, which brings us to our third stock down of the evening. That is the backup wide receivers. The backup wide receivers with the San Francisco 49ers, if I'm going to be blunt, just kind of suck. And yes, many of them have specialties, mostly on kick returns and punt returns. And how much can you truly ask out of your 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 receivers? The issue is Trent Taylor's been a veteran for a long time, and he should know how to play in the NFL. Although he's older now, but then Danny Gray is a former third-round pick. Ronnie Bell is a late-round pick last year. And then you have Tay Martin, who's a UDFA, but I think ultimately he's probably better than Danny Gray and probably better than Ronnie Bell and Trent Taylor, if I'm being completely honest with you. But just shockingly bad. The lack of ability to separate was staggering. I get against the ones, you're going to struggle. That's expected. But Trent Taylor, and I like Trent. He's a vibes-only kind of guy. There's 10 seconds before halftime. It's 3rd and goal. Taylor has a ball hit him right in the hands that would have been a touchdown, and he dropped it. Then later in the game, it's 3rd and 8. And there's a screen pass to him to the right. He catches the ball. He has 5 wide open yards, no defender in sight. He can get 5 easy yards to his right. Instead, he cuts inside to, I would assume, follow his blocker, who is blocking someone actively. But instead of going around them, leading further inside, or again, taking the outside open space, he runs right into the back of the blocker. It's like, what the hell are you doing? I get you aren't this yak ability kind of player, but you can't give me 5 free yards? Is your ball carrier vision that bad to a point where you cannot see wide open yards on the field? The Saints were giving you free space, and he said, I don't think I want that. I'm going to make my life harder for myself. And it's like, what is the thought process there? And ultimately, if you don't have the instincts in preseason, why would you have them in the regular season? I get it. He's a kick return, special teams kind of guy, and practice squad player, sure. But I am so tired of hearing Trent Taylor's having a phenomenal camp. Yeah, a couple nice days. I do not want to hear he might be locked in for a roster spot. Why? What has he shown anybody? He's a practice squad elevation at best. Terrible game against the New Orleans Saints. Then Ronnie Bell, who at this point is kind of a younger version of Trent Taylor. Inconsistent hands, drops a handful of balls, and kind of fights his way back and catches a handful. And again, inconsistency with the hands. But my biggest issue with that is there is a motto that San Francisco carries. That no block, no rock. Cool. We're all on board. You want to get the ball, you have to block. Ronnie Bell loves to block. Ronnie Bell is willing to block every single play. The issue is when he blocks and Kyle Shanahan says, you know what? I want to reward Ronnie Bell with the rock. He can't catch it ever. And it's like, you fumbled punts last year, you got benched. This year, he looked so checked out against the Saints, it was mind-boggling. For a young player that I'm sure is frustrated, I get that. Drop a handful of passes, you're not performing up to your standard, you can get in your head. I get that. But you're a late-round pick, and you want to push and fight for a roster spot. But he looked so checked out against the Saints that I would not trust him out there whatsoever. And I like Ronnie Bell. He has some skill. Again, he can block. He has at Michigan a handful of years ago. He was a fine receiver. He had some yak ability. But now it's like you have to catch the ball to get the yak. And if you're not catching the ball, well, you can't get the yak. And if you ain't catching the ball, you're not going to play. Just a bad day from Trent and Ronnie Bell. Then we get to Danny Gray, everyone's favorite third-round pick, right? I don't know what it is with the third round. Ty Davis-Price, Trey Sermon, eventually it'll be Cam Latu. But now it's Danny Gray, where his speed, and he's not the first of one of these stories. John Ross is probably the biggest example of this, that sometimes you can run a 4.2. You can set NFL Combine records, but your speed does not always translate to the NFL. Danny Gray's speed does not and has not and likely will not translate to the NFL. He's looked slow the past 3 years. He can't separate. I mean, you have backup defensive backs guarding you. And I don't care if they say on the broadcast, well, he was a collegiate sprinter and a track runner. So was Danny Gray. And football speed doesn't equate to track speed. Danny Gray, I don't really think has football speed, which makes no sense. He plays slow. His claim to fame is a go ball against the Green Bay Packers in the preseason from Trey Lance. That's not going to cut it. Yes, there's been injuries. Yes, he's had ups and downs, and sure. When Jimmy Garoppolo came back, there wasn't really a play style fit. That sucks for Danny Gray. But if I'm being completely honest with you, he isn't even a top 7 receiver on the roster. And his only catch yesterday was basically a drop. I don't know why, and it's no shot at them, but NBC Sports put on their Twitter account, look at this amazing catch by Danny Gray. It's like he jumped up for it fine, but it hit him in the hands. It shot up in the air, and had it not been for an extra few seconds in the air, that ball's going in the hand of a Saints player, and it's an interception. Like, Danny Gray then catches the ball, but it's like, avoid the initial drop. It's different if you're Deebo or Brandon Aiyuk or maybe Ricky Pearsall or Juwan Jennings. Those guys are proven or at least first-round talents. Danny Gray is going to be here, or is in his year number 3. And there's been literally no steps of improvement. It's been frustration after frustration, setback after setback, and I like Danny Gray. I wanted to draft Danny Gray knowing that he had the skill set that can translate or hopefully translate to the NFL. Just like San Francisco thought. You talk about watching freaking 3 strikes down the middle, down the pipe looking, that's what it feels like whenever Danny Gray plays. It's like, oh my goodness, like what are we doing? The speed doesn't translate. He's dropping balls left and right, can't separate. I mean, man. Talk about third-round pick. Just, that is a hellscape, a black hole of picks not named Fred Warner. Just I hate saying it, but Danny Gray is another third-round pick bust. And let's look into this somewhat because, the best receivers on San Francisco. Well, Beta Niner thinks Danny Gray is still receiver 6. Let's talk about it. You got Deebo, you got Aiyuk, you got Juwan. Top 3, Those are your starters. Pearsall is making the team. Cowling has shown more in one game than Gray has shown in 3 years of time. He's making the team. He's a rookie. Then you have that kind of special team veteran player. You want to go Ronnie Bell? You want to go Danny Gray? You want to go Trent Taylor? Or go with Chris Conley, who has been the most complete and consistent of that grouping. He's an excellent gunner on special teams, solid hands. He can play the outside if someone goes down. I mean, I don't think there's even a debate as to who's making the roster at this point. Receiver is so straightforward, so just right to the numbers. Bang, bang, bang. Everybody else, Trent, Bell, Gray, Martin, goodbye. Goodbye. And, it's just like that to me is the strongest room. If you retain Danny Gray, what are you retaining? An unproven, unknown, inconsistent hope so. At this point, let's be honest here. Knowing San Francisco's luck in the playoffs, Danny Gray will get cut, go to the Chiefs, then score the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl against us, right? I think Danny Gray can still play, just not here. He's buried here, and there's really no way to get back up in the room unless he goes to the practice squad. But unfortunately, you can't go to the practice squad. And I don't think Chris Conley passes through waivers. I think he's too good of a special teamer now with the new emphasis on defenses wanting special team talent. This is not 5 years ago covering punts and kicks. This is we need people that can actually tackle ball carriers. That's not Danny Gray. That is Chris Conley. Moving to the defense for our next stock up, some positivity for you. A young player actually playing kind of out of his skis and really well. Renardo Green, second-round pick this year. I'm not sure if he starts, but if Isaac Yiadom isn't healthy come week 1, Green is likely in line to start opposite Mooney Ward and Demo Lenore on the outside. And I thought this was Green's best game so far. He's had kind of not a bad training camp. There's been a lot of highlights. There's been a lot of things you want to see, unafraid to get his hands dirty. He's sticky in coverage. The things we talked about when he got drafted, those things have translated to training camp. He's just young. He'll make mistakes. But there was a 3rd and 7 early in the first half. And 3rd and 7, this is going to be a simple quick out by the Saints. It's one of the easiest plays to get a first down on. It's one of the easier plays to get separation for a receiver on. Renardo Green sticks with the receiver near the right sideline, plays the receiver, not the ball, knocks the ball out of the ground, out of the receiver's hand, and then creates a 4th down eventual punt. That's what you want from young players. That's what you want from rookies. I think despite one play of the day, Renardo Green held up really well against Chris Olave, who's probably a top 25 receiver in football, if not higher. Like, he's a bona fide number 1. Quarterback play certainly held him back. But when your second-round pick, your what seems to be 4th cornerback, holds up against another team's number 1 receiver, and we're not talking like terrible team number 1. We're talking about, another middle-of-the-road team's number 1 former first-round pick receiver. Green was locking up Olave all night. He was fighting with them. They were jockeying back and forth for position. And it's like, heck yeah. Heck, that's what you want. Heck, yes. Young player, unafraid of the moment, unafraid to face on the opposition that is, again, a first-round pick receiver who has proven to be a really good player in the NFL already. Like, Green was really good yesterday. And sometimes young defensive backs are good in coverage, but struggle against the run. There was a play in this game where I thought that Green's ability to chase down the ball carrier. There was a play by, I think it was Jamal Williams. He had a 5-10 yard run, a big chunk gain on the ground, and Green chased him down, didn't give up, fought from one side of the field to go tackle the ball carrier. That's what you want to see. High effort and ultimately high reward so far from Green through 2 games. Definitely a big stock up for him, and kind of riding high into a position where, again, if Yiadom isn't healthy, Green's probably starting against the Jets in week number 1, which will be awesome to see if that's the case. Moving back down to our final stock down of the day, it is my and your favorite player to discuss, Cameron Latu. Today I released my 53-man roster prediction, and I went back and forth on this because the Niners usually only utilize 3 tight ends. Usually it's been George and Dwelly and Warner in the past. Sometimes they've carried 4. Last year there was a lot of injuries, so it's kind of up and down at who they picked up and who they kept. Going through my roster predictions, I could not find a spot for Cam Latu. And yes, if they keep 4 tight ends, he'll be the 4th guy. But what's more likely? They keep George Kittle, Eric Saubert, Braden Willis, then they bury Cam Latu behind them where he doesn't play and is probably inactive for all 18 games or roughly, the majority of the season. Or they keep George Kittle, they keep Saubert, they keep Willis active all year long, then cut Latu and retain a player like Jake Tunges, who is going to be a practice squad guy for sure, elevations here or there. It just feels like the experiment of hoping Latu becomes something is over. He's in year 2, lost all of last year due to injury, torn meniscus. It just feels like Cam Latu, like Danny Gray, despite being in different years of their career, just like what does Cam Latu bring you? Inconsistent hands, is an okay blocker here or there. I mean, I don't want to come down too hard on him simply because he did kind of transfer over to tight end later in his college career. And at Bama, there wasn't many reps. I think in his last 2 years at Bama, he kind of became something. But even then, this really wasn't much to see. What really bothers me about him is that he'll be lined up across linebackers and safeties, guys who he is bigger than, guys who are below his frame of 6'5", 245 pounds. He's a big dude. There's reasons to believe that he can become something because his stature screams NFL tight end. But when you're 6'5", 245, you should be able to body up almost anybody. Use your frame, box out defensive backs, box out linebackers, utilize your physical ability to aid you as a receiver. Cam Latu doesn't know how to use his body. He has no idea how to use a 6'5" God-given frame to help him gain leverage as a receiver. He's being out-physicaled by linebackers and smaller defensive backs to a point where there's balls over the middle being thrown and are in his hands, and smaller defensive backs are smacking the ball out of it. Now, credit goes to the defense, fine. But that can't happen on a consistent basis for a player that wants to make the roster. And that happens every single game to Cam Latu. And if it isn't that, it's a clean drop, it's a fumble. There was a play in training camp this year where Joshua Dobbs, who just got here this year, was screaming at him because Latu didn't know the play, didn't know where he was supposed to be. When you don't have the ability because of injury to play for a whole year, you can at least learn the offense, man. He hasn't even learned the offense yet. And yes, people learn different ways. Some people learn actually running the play over and over again. He couldn't do that. Maybe that's the case. But again, for a third-round pick who San Francisco talked up of he can really become something, he was a project from day one. The project has kind of played itself out. There has been no improvement. There has been even no signs of improvement. He, yes, had 3 catches for 30 yards, but again, drops the ball over the middle, can't use his body. The only saving grace to Cam Latu in this game was his block on the outside on Cowing's 19-yard end around. Where, okay, if Cam Latu can just be a solid NFL blocker and be a special teamer, there's a place for guys like that in the NFL. Charlie Warner being one of the biggest examples of that, a blocker and a special teamer. The thing is, that's Eric Saubert's job now. That's Braden Willis's job now. But man, again, what does Cam Latu do well? If you're San Francisco, what bet would you take? Cam Latu being a valuable fourth tight end, taking up a roster spot, or cutting him, retaining Jake Tunges on the practice squad for an elevation every 4 or 5 weeks and someone else goes down, which they inevitably will, and maybe adding an edge rusher here or there, or keeping an extra linebacker you don't want to give up. That's the thing, is that when you get into roster bubble conversations, it's, okay, do you want to cut Tatum Bethune or Jalen Graham, or you want to keep Cam Latu? You want to keep Darrell Luter Jr. or Chase Lucas that can actually help you on special teams? Or do you want to keep Cam Latu? I'm sorry, but I didn't even want to draft Cam Latu. I don't want to keep the guy. And I hope he plays well. I wish him all the best. But man, it's going into year number 2 for Cam Latu. And there's really just is nothing. You're like, I'm impressed. It's like, how are you a third-round pick? What did they see in you? Because your frame, you don't utilize it at all. You're an okay blocker at best. And you can't be a receiver. Like, you're not going to back up George Kittle. And if you are, not a good day. Ever. Let's be positive, though. Move back up towards the top. And our last stock up of the evening is Curtis Robinson. San Francisco has been looking for a backup Mike linebacker for a while now. Now, Fred Warner is the true number 1. He's an all-pro for sure. But with Dre Greenlaw being injured, Devondre Campbell's now in the building. D. Winters has seemingly taken a step up this year. You have younger players like, Tatum Bethune and Jalen Graham, who you like. Still not really a Mike linebacker. Curtis Robinson has stepped up in a big way to be that during training camp with a green dot. And definitely after this game against the Saints, he was all over the field. He was everywhere. He's making plays in Spencer Rattler's face, batting the balls down, being unafraid to get in the quarterback's face. And some guys will jump early and the quarterback will throw around him. He just kept running for him and put his hands up. That's good stuff right there. There was a play where, Taysom Hill was running the football and Robinson got in the backfield so fast, got him for a tackle for loss. And you and I both know how tough Taysom Hill is to bring down. That's a tough SOB to bring down. Robinson got him down in the backfield. Then later in the game, there was a play where I think he evaded Taysom Hill's block as a fullback and then got the running back in the backfield. Again, it's hard to evade Taysom Hill. He just shot right by him and bang, had the ball carrier down. It was like, well, he can play the Mike linebacker. He's instinctual so far in training camp and preseason. He's a lock. Like, if I had to make the linebacker room today, it's Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell, and D. Winters, Tatum Bethune, and Curtis Robinson. Like, DFF is no longer the veteran lock to make the roster he was walking into the season. Curtis Robinson has taken over his spot as the veteran backup behind Fred and definitely behind Devondre Campbell, to a point where I would not be shocked if San Francisco is any teeny bit hesitant to play and start D. Winters to lead towards a young player. Curtis Robinson may start against the Jets week 1. Now, I wouldn't do that, but hey, if they don't want to play a young player, don't want to play a young guy, I could see Curtis Robinson playing and starting against the Jets when they go to their base, 4-3 defense. I do have an extra mixed bag for you today, and that is Malik Mustafa. There was a lot of good, and there has been all through training camp, and especially in this game, a lot of good. Mustafa plays hard, flies around, and does his job. Against the Titans, clearly a much better day, but he was making highlight plays in that game, where in this game, he had 5 tackles. He was more so cleaning up a lot of plays that when his teammates missed tackles, he was there to kind of clean up the mess. That's what a safety does, right? He was doing his job. There was a play in this game where Derek Carr threw to Chris Olave, and Mustafa just, again, out of a cannon, just bang, lit him up. And it was like, yes, that's what you want from a likely in the box safety, although he can play coverage and play back, sure. But Mustafa, to me, is probably going to be utilized in like specific situations. Probably not going to start week number 1. I think it'll be Jair Brown and George Odom with Mustafa kind of mixed in there as the kind of, wild card third safety in the box guy to make the explosive play. My bigger issue with him is because, and it's the same thing for Jair Brown early in his career, same thing for Talanoa Hufanga early in his career, which doesn't shock me because Mustafa plays very much like them. Mustafa has a tendency to take bad angles towards tackles. Usually it's on running plays. He plays so hard and so fast where instead of taking the smartest route to the ball carrier you may give him a couple extra yards, 3 or 4 yards here or there, but you secure the tackle and you get him down, halting a massive play of 20-plus yards. Mustafa does have a tendency to just say, gotta kill, and miss a tackle here or there, and all of a sudden the guy is 25 yards behind him, and he's like, what happened? And that does concern me, but that's stuff you refine with reps. That is something that Hufanga had to go through early in his career, which is why he sat for a whole season. He was a special teamer for a whole season behind Tart and Jimmy Ward. Same thing for Jair Brown. Brown wasn't going to play until Hufanga got hurt. That's probably the same path that Mustafa's on, where you love him. He's a great prospect. He can be a great player for you. You just want him to kind of refine himself a little bit more, mainly in the angles he takes. Again, when you're a safety, you're the last line of defense. You can make a highlight play. We're all for that. We don't want to hinder that play style. What you want to do is clean up all the things that can truly, again, be cleaned up and refined and fixed. Like, you can take better angles to the ball. You can secure better tackles. There was a play in this game where it was, I think, one of the Saints' early scoring drives, Derek Carr's scoring drive, where the ball carrier is at the goal line, which ultimately he was ruled down beforehand, but Mustafa had a clean shot right at him, and he missed the tackle. And it's like, man, you have to make that tackle. You cannot just be playing so fast. You can't readjust your body or, essentially what I'm trying to say is that he almost plays too fast, where it's like, slow down. And I think once he plays more, the game will slow down for him. It's just, we are seeing the early stages of a young player that is like, he wants to hunt something. He's on the hunt. He's the inexperienced hunter that has all the tools. He has the right weapon. He has the physical traits you like. It's just, how do you kind of get him in a box and have that controlled chaos? He's chaotic. You want to have that controlled chaos because he can be truly something special. Malik Mustafa can just be simply awesome if they can control that chaos that he has, because he's fun. He is fun to watch. But I want to thank all of you guys in the chat, from Invader 49er to Lori Matthews, Papa J, Rob Smith. Saw 49er Media up here earlier. Akawa Cheap Dope, you're still there. So many more at the very top. Bobo was in here. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Tell me what you think about the Niners' Week 2 preseason win against the New Orleans Saints. How do you feel? Who was your stock ups? Who was your stocks down? And stay tuned for later this week. I'll give my Week 2 roster predictions. Then we'll do it all again once week number 3 happens this Friday, which the starters are supposed to play. Brock Purdy should play again. Isaac Rendo and Ricky Pearsall might play. Hope to practice this week. But I want to kindly ask you to follow us on social media as we build towards those moments. 49ers 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. Please go ahead and go to sportsspider.com. If you're like myself, you get tired of going to all these new places, ESPN, Fox, Sporting News, USA Today. You want all of your sporting news in the exact same place. SportsSpider.com has you covered. Latest articles, videos, podcasts from everywhere, all around the web, from YouTube, organized in one place and organized by your favorite team. Hit that link down below and go to SportsSpider.com. And as always, if you can, like, share, subscribe, leave that review. And if you want to see your Niners play this year, hopefully it's with Brandon Aiyuk and Trent Williams in the fray, week 1 against the New York Jets, use our promo code 49ERSAccess. 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. My name is Sterling Bennett. Hope you're having a wonderful Monday. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Again, stay tuned for roster predictions and stay tuned for week 3 of the NFL preseason when the San Francisco 49ers take the field once again this Friday and come right back here to this YouTube channel for the next edition of Stock Up and Stock Down. That's all I have for you today. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And as always, stay faithful.